Canada's Foreign Minister, John Baird, is visiting India, and he joins us now. To start with, Mr. Baird, I'd really like to turn your attention to events in Libya. And as you're aware, the U.S. ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens, amongst 4 diplomats killed in an attack in Benghazi. I wanted your reaction to that, specifically from the point of view that Canada was a big part of the NATO operations that saw the end of the Gaddafi regime in Libya, and the question, has the international community really failed in offering Libya stability after they effected that regime change?
I think we're all horrified with the death of the ambassador and the other 3 Americans. It's an attack on diplomacy. It's an outrageous terrorist attack that we hope will obviously be fully investigated, and those responsible brought to justice. Our sympathies go out to the families and friends of the individuals affected. No one ever said this was going to be easy. We went in to protect civilian lives in Libya, and I think the various military forces who participated in that operation did an outstanding job. Change is coming slowly. We said at the time that it wouldn't go from Muammar Gaddafi to Thomas Jefferson overnight, and they've obviously struggled. But I think step by step they are making progress. Not as much progress as I think they would like or we would like, but we'll continue to stand by the people and the government, the new government in Tripoli in this hour of need.
Despite the nature of the attack, where there were literally mobs taking over the U.S. embassy there in Benghazi, you still think there's hope, that there's progress in Libya?
Listen, we've got to have hope in this business. We'll do everything we can to provide support to the government, the newly elected government in Tripoli, in this transition to a civil society. It won't come easy, and it won't happen overnight, but I think we're committed to stay involved. Obviously, it's a huge tragedy. I visited Benghazi less than a year ago, and to think that the ambassador and his entourage were attacked in such a brazen fashion is obviously abhorrent to everything we stand for.
And what would you say to those who say these are just the forces that were unleashed by NATO in Libya when they went in to effect that regime change? When you got rid of Gaddafi, in effect, it is these radicalist Islamist forces that were released in Libya.
Listen, we went in not for regime change. We went in to protect Libyan civilians who were at risk of being slaughtered in Benghazi at the hands of Gaddafi and his thugs. They are moving to establish some fundamental freedoms in a civil society. It won't come easily. The National Transitional Council, the group that led reform during the crisis, we had a lot of confidence in. They've now just recently gone to an elected government, and we've got to continue to provide support in that the transition goes well. It won't be easy, and there will be a small number of actors who will seek to cause trouble, but we can't let the terrorists win.
So no regrets for NATO's actions? Or
absolutely none.
Mr. Baird, when it comes to West Asia or the Middle East, Iran has been big on the international agenda, even as Canada was planning its move to shut down the mission in Tehran to expel the Iranian diplomats from Canada. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was in fact in Tehran, meeting with the top leadership of Iran. In your talks today with the Indian leadership, did that come up, that Canada and India have such clearly divergent positions on Iran?
Listen, I was able to brief Minister Krishna about what led us to the difficult decision to close our embassy in Tehran, what led us to expel the Iranian diplomats from Ottawa, in addition to why we listed Iran as a state sponsor of terror. I think he has a better understanding of where we stand. This obviously is, in our judgment, the biggest threat to peace and security in the world today, and a significant concern. Not just their nuclear program, their deteriorating human rights situation, which is an abomination, and the terrible influence they have on neighboring countries in the Gulf. Causes us huge concern, in addition to the racist and anti-Semitic rhetoric aimed at Israel and the Jewish people.
Does Canada then hope that India, as the US has been asking, that India would reduce its dependency on Iran, particularly Iranian oil?
We're certainly offering to work closer with India to sell Canadian oil and gas to help fuel the prosperity here in India, and that's the best we can do.
All right, let's talk about nuclear fuel as well. Canada and India did sign that nuclear cooperation agreement in 2010, yet no movement forward. What sort of assurances is Canada really looking for from India to take that agreement forward?
I think the nuclear cooperation agreement that was signed by Prime Minister Harper and Prime Minister Singh just demonstrates that we're dealing with the India of the 21st century and not the India of the 20th century. We have to negotiate an administrative agreement that deals with the details, and one of the things that Canada feels strongly about is just to be able to track the use of Canadian uranium. We're not asking anything from the government of India that we haven't already asked the government of the United States, the European Union, and other countries with sales of uranium. It's just some straightforward administrative arrangements, and we look forward to successfully concluding that. We've challenged our officials to, at the agency level, to work constructively and to make it happen in short order.
Even so, that agreement is stalled. Is India effectively blocking the agreement from going forward?
There has to be administrative arrangements under every agreement, and we're confident that with goodwill and some creativity, we can meet the important issues that are important to Canada and the needs of India at the same time.
One part, of course, is tracking uranium. There's also the issue of nuclear safety, and even as you landed in India, many protesters outside the Russian-built Kudankulam nuclear reactor asking really about more transparency when it comes to nuclear energy. Do protests like that worry you? Does that dissuade Canada in any way from dealing with India on nuclear?
No, I mean, listen, every jurisdiction has got to make its own decisions. Obviously, nuclear power plays an important part in Canada's energy mix. I think what you need is a strong operator and a strong regulator. We've got both of those in Canada. And obviously we have a degree of confidence that India can accept its responsibilities, continue to accept its responsibilities in this regard.
You and Mr. Krishna also discussed the issue of terror. India is particularly worried about what they see as a re-emergence of Sikh terrorist groups, some of whom have links there in Canada. Is there something specifically that Canada has been able to share as well? Is this something you're aware of?
Listen, Minister Krishna was concerned. We later met with the Minister of Home Affairs. If India is concerned about what's going on in Canada, we're concerned. Well, we've done a lot in terms of our relationship on security and intelligence and counterterrorism. And I've certainly committed that we'll do everything we can under Canadian law to combat any activities or operations going on in Canada. We listed many years ago terrorist organizations involved with extremism and radical pursuing violence, and we'll do everything we can to support India. This is the great struggle of our generation, the fight against terrorism, and we want to stand shoulder to shoulder with the government and people of India. Don't forget, I mean, it was the bombing of the Air India flight back in 1985 that was the biggest terrorist attack from Canada's perspective, and obviously was felt here in India as well. And we're deeply committed at the highest levels to do everything we can to combat it.
But what specifically are India and Canada speaking about? Any kind of intelligence sharing, any sort of investigative?
I think our security services, our intelligence services have good relationships. If we can do more to perhaps formalize those and regularize them, if we do more to train each other and brief each other on what we're doing, those are some small steps that we're certainly keen and eager to do to combat
I only
terrorism.
ask that because of all the terror groups that are, in fact, threatening India. There is the LTT, there is the Babar Khalsa, there is the Lashkar-e-Toiba. All of them have at times developed links with people inside Canada. The question really, is there a move between India and Canada to try and forge closer ties when it comes to terror intelligence sharing?
I said exactly that we're prepared to strengthen the relationship that we have in this regard. You know, was our government, one of our first acts in the first few months of taking office was to list the Tamil Tigers as a terrorist organization in Canada, something that the previous Canadian government refused to do. We made our first listing about a radical and extremist Sikh terrorist organization back in 2003, and we're prepared to continue to be vigilant to ensure that we're doing everything we reasonably can under Canadian law to combat terrorism. This is a fight where India does not stand alone, Canada stands with it.
All right, and we are in India expecting a visit by Prime Minister Harper as well. What are you expecting when that visit happens?
Listen, the Prime Minister enjoyed his last visit. He enjoyed hosting Prime Minister Singh in Canada following the G20 in Toronto. I know he's enthusiastic. When you ever have a leader's visit, it does focus the mind of the entire machinery of government for tangible deliverables, and both sides, I think, are going to work as hard as they can to make the visit a great success. I think the biggest focus will be trade and commerce. We have $5 billion of trade. We can do a lot more. This can help fuel prosperity on both economies and create more jobs for the people in both countries.
Minister Baird, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.